It's the Wrestling Caucus. I'm Peter A.
I'm smileyarriaga.
And you can listen wherever you get podcasts. And you can follow us on the socials. Facebook.com/The Wrestling Caucus. There's a fire truck going by.
Yep.
I think that's by me. Yeah, it's by me. Yeah.
I think it's by me too. That's interesting.
Whatever. Twitter @Wrestling Caucus, Instagram @The Wrestling Caucus. And the reason why we're here today on this hot July evening, Smiley, I know you've had some quarrels about how interviewers are presented in wrestling. Now, before we dive into any specifics, what is your overall perspective on how interviewers are portrayed in wrestling today?
Well, I guess it's hard not to go on a company by company basis because it's like it's WWE has like their problem is that like their interviewers. Renee Young or Renee Paquette was the last dope interviewer they had. The last really like good, like you can tell like she came off like a real person. She is a real person. That's why her podcast is awesome. She really, even if it's the Miz or like, you know, anybody, she can really have a good interview. Like she can like react to people well. It's very natural with her. But like a lot of the other interviews now in WWE are just like robotic. Like, you know, they conduct the interview like they hold up the microphone and they ask questions, but there's nothing memorable really. And it all sounds like kind of scripted. But when it comes to like AEW, now they have freaking Tony Schiavone and Jim Ross, right? But the thing is, every time there's a freaking interview, the wrestler takes away the microphone from Tony Schiavone. And Tony Schiavone literally has to walk off the scene like a moron, even though he's the freaking interviewer. Like imagine if Hulk Hogan took away Mean Gene's microphone. Like they had a relationship. Like Hogan would flex his muscles and cut a crazy promo, and Mean Gene would hold the microphone and be like, "Oh man, this guy's crazy." But like he would say it all with his body language. It was a relationship between the wrestler and the interviewer. But like AEW, like yeah, they have some good promos, but like a lot of times, like why are you taking the mic away from the interviewer? It's like, you know, there's no relationship. It doesn't look like a natural interview. It just looks like, oh, all right, walk off stage now. I'm doing my monologue, you know?
Yeah, you know, here's the thing, you know, we're talking about, you know, Mean Gene Okerlund and, you know, Renee Young and, you know, in the past, early on in his career, Kevin Kelly, Jonathan Coachman, Lillian Garcia to a degree, Michael Cole, yeah, of course, Tony Schiavone, and now Alicia Atout in MLW. I just don't think that wrestling now wants or needs another Mean Gene Okerlund. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
the thing is, I think if you're going to have in-ring interviews, yeah, if you don't need it, but if you're gonna have if you're gonna announce an interview segment like Tony Schiavone, whoever, it doesn't have to be Tony Schiavone or AEW exclusive, right? Whatever the fuck, throughout wrestling, so and so is gonna interview so and so. I think it needs, to me, it should be an interview. You know what I mean? At least initially, and if you know, and if shit goes awry, then shit goes awry. You know, during the course of the interview, right? Or if, you know what I mean? Like, I think that, you know, watching like WWE is just like a person is there with the microphone and they say a thing and then the wrestler just gives them a soundbite and then that's it. It's just, who cares? There's no point to it at all. It's just, you know, corporate speak and it's just nothing.
Like
with
the more important thing,
yeah.
Did I cut you off? Sorry.
No, okay, let me just make one point. So with AEW's thing, like you said, you know, you have the interviewer asks a question, or the talent takes away the microphone, or the interview turns into there's nothing, or it's just in AEW, like, you know, the talent will make a joke out of the announcer, which happens, but it's just, I wish the interview would just have a beginning, middle, and end, or just a beginning and an end, and then shit could happen after the question was asked, or some. But again, I just don't think wrestling wants that anymore. I think they're.
Like,
I don't
you
know.
don't want things to come off real. Because like,
I don't think they want. I don't think they want that kind of thing. I don't think they want it. I'm not saying it's a good or bad. I honestly, this is not a hill I want to die on, to be honest. But I think if you're going to have an interview segment with an interviewer talking to a talent, I just wish that it would just be conducted, and it's a good tool to move a story along. You know, if Tony Schiavone is asking a heel a question about something that they did last week or 2 weeks ago, great. And if the heel says something despicable, the charismatic interviewer would just be like, "That's a load of horseshit" or whatever. Mean Gene used to do it all the time, but you know they don't have a person like that anymore. You know, as far as like an in-ring interviewer, or backstage interviewer, the focus is not on that anymore in wrestling today.
Well, like the more like I said, like people remember Mean Gene because he came off real. It came off like, you know, believable. Like you don't even sometimes you don't even have to show the interviewer for the interview to look, you know, believable. Like New Japan, we have a lot. I have a lot of qualms with New Japan. Like, you know, like at least during the pandemic, I did. But one thing I've always liked about New Japan is that their post-match interviews always look believable. Like it's just the wrestler literally walks to the back, and right when they get to the back, the camera's there, and they talk about what just happened, and it's always like, you know, off of the dome, like, you know, like very spur of the moment. It looks believable. Like they're usually sweating out of breath, but they're cutting a believable promo. Like and you see like the background has like their like a bunch of logos, like you would see at a UFC press conference. It looks very believable, like a sport. Like I love that. That's one of my favorite things about New Japan is that like it's very sports like you know, like I said, like, but you don't even have to show the interviewer to have a cool wrestling interview.
I just think it's just a different presentation. Like New Japan does it this way, and everyone else does it another way. But I do like what New Japan does with it's like a like it's like a media scrum, like what they do in
yes
in sports, and yeah, I like the way there's no talents there interviewing them, which is fine. It's fine for me. But yeah, I just don't think wrestling is the focus is not on that. You know, there's not like when I'm watching, you know, AEW, they have their trusted voices interviewing like Jim Ross's pre-taped interviews backstage are always remarkable. It's always been, even in WWF with Steve Austin and The Rock, the most famous one. They're always really good, but their focus is not having a talent like a Mean Gene type of thing. Like that's not the focus anymore. Or, you know, back in or Gordon Soley type of thing, or when Tony Schiavone would interview people in NWA right before the match would take place. It's not like that anymore. They don't just don't. That's not the focus. Schiavone. What? Yeah.
Britt Baker and Tony Schiavone.
Right. Exactly. That's cool. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I just think that you know, I would, if you're going to have an interview segment like that, just don't, you know, do shit to the interviewer. You know what I mean?
Like make it look like a joke.
Yeah, like if shit goes south, then the interviewer should be like, "I'm getting the fuck out of here. Like I'm out of here." You know, that fine. But yeah, this is not a hill as far as you know that I want to die on. But I think AEW's specifically AEW, because in WWE too, they used to do good pre-taped pre-taped sit-down interviews. Like those are really good. Like keep those going. I like that.
Like one of my favorite of those was when you remember when Brock Lesnar betrayed Paul Heyman, and next week and the week after, Paul Heyman was like he looked depressed, and like Renee Young was interviewing him and he was like breaking down. And that was really cool. It was very believable. He was talking about like I think Brock was about to fight Roman Reigns at SummerSlam.
Yeah.
I love that's an example of a great backstage interview, or just pretty much any interview, like most interviews that Jim Ross does, most sit downs with him always come off very believable.
Yeah. I guess they're just not trained people, or people probably just don't just care about that kind of thing anymore. But you know, yeah, I don't know.
It always comes out like a lot of times it just comes off as like, oh, here's another segment.
I would just, if you're not, I think I have no problem with the talent just going out and just cutting a promo. I just go out there and Cody's going to speak, or, Goldberg's going to speak, or John Cena's going to speak, or Alexander Hammerstone's going to speak today. That's fine. They do that well. There's nothing, there's nothing wrong with that formula. But I guess wrestling is moving away from the interviewer talking to a talent backstage, because you watch every American wrestling show. MLW does it with Alicia Atout, but that's about it. Really, I mean, AEW does it with Tony Schiavone, but it's not it's not like a focus upon thing. You know what I mean? No one's at the show is waiting for someone to interview someone. If that makes any sense.
Well, kind of, it's sad because that kind of thing makes, like I said, it makes your product look like, it makes your product look believable. I know I say that a lot, but that's one thing that's kind of, it's like one of the major qualms I have with like a lot of wrestling today. It's just like believability is kind of going out the window in favor of more action oriented stuff.
How does someone interviewing someone, or the lack thereof, make a show believable or less believable?
No, I mean, it is not that it's the only thing that makes your show believable, but it helps when your interviews, you're when the interviewer is interviewing a wrestler about something that just happened on TV, they ask them a question about what's going to happen next week. It helps make the show. It helps make the show better. It helps make it seem like what's happening matters.
Is your problem with the interviewer or the interview segment, or
just I guess how the segment is put together sometimes?
Okay.
Not with just specific interviewers. Like I said, I love Tony Schiavone. I guess I love Jim Ross. I love I guess those are the my favorite two interviewers now.
Yeah, you know what? To me, again, this is the type of thing. There's a lot of things about wrestling that annoy me, and this is not one of them. But I will say, with AEW, when you have Marvez, he shouldn't do that. I think there's a better. I wouldn't have the Marvez interview segments are always just pointless to me. The Jim Ross sit down interviews, great.
Wait,
do more of that.
What are the Marvez interviews again?
Okay, every time when Marvez interviews a talent, it's always like he's either brushed aside or it turns into chaos. So it's like there's no point of having him there.
There's always some goofy hijinks, some shit.
Not goofy hijinks. It's just he's always tossed aside, or he just fades into the background.
He's always undermined.
He's to a degree. Yeah.
Yes.
Or it's just he has no credibility. That's with interviewers doing, it's almost like they come off across you're just a dork. You know what I mean?
Yes. So that's what I was trying to say before.
Okay.
That's my problem.
But I just think that if you're going to have interviewers interviewing talent, they need to come off credible. Jim Ross, credible. Tony Schiavone is credible, but Marvez, not credible. Dasha, to a certain extent, just from an on-screen.
Yeah, it's not
capacity.
bad. It's not very memorable, but it's not
That's the thing. You're right. Those segments, generally speaking, the only thing that makes it memorable is the talent, how they, their talking ability. But I would just have the talent just do promos then. You don't need the interviewer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's better for them to just do promos rather than have an interview there for the sole purpose of him or her being scooted away or undermined.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, that's it.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
if you're
like
gonna make them look dumb, don't have them there.
I will say this, like with WWE across American wrestling TV, um, wrestlers cutting promos in the ring solo is always better. It's always been better because again, you don't have a lot of Mean Genes or a lot of Tony Schiavone's to go around. WWE doesn't want that kind of thing anymore. They've completely gotten rid of that. That's over. And Renee Young is gone, so that was their last chance to have like a credible interviewer. But
well, she was a credible interviewer.
right, like John Cena does not need somebody to interview him. You know what I mean? Yeah. Big E doesn't need somebody to interview him. Roman Reigns doesn't even need somebody to interview him. AEW, Cody Rhodes doesn't need somebody to interview him. Kenny Omega doesn't. Chris Jericho doesn't. MJF certainly doesn't.
I mean, it's nice to have a mix of like, sometimes have interviewers, sometimes have them just cut promos. It's like, depends on the situation. You can have a mix.
I would focus on the backstage pre-taped interview. Oh, the sit down interview, like what Jim Ross does. I would that would be the focus to me, because again, you're it's going to be so hard to get another. You're not going to have another Mean Gene, quote unquote. You know what I mean? MLW has Alicia Atout, which is fine, and she does a great job, and wrestlers like her. She has credibility, because wrestlers respect her. They all interview with her on her YouTube channel. She has respect and credibility, but we'll see. But again, like
you said, like you don't need another Mean Gene. You just need you just make them look credible.
That's what I mean.
Like Mean Gene earned his name because they kept making him look credible with Hogan.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't want a Mean Gene duplicate. I just want a credible person. That's it. A credible person. Somebody with credibility. Because an interviewer is, you're important. You're like you're part of the media. You're like in sports, the sideline reporter is very important.
You're part of the show. It makes the show look official.
Yeah.
Like, we got coverage of this important thing that's happening.
Yeah. And in wrestling, you're moving the story along. You can. But in wrestling doesn't need it, but if you're gonna have it, make sure they have credibility.
Yeah, like when Finn Balor debuted on Raw and he fought Roman Reigns in the main event. As soon as he beat Roman Reigns, while the crowd is cheering for him, and Finn Balor's like, cheering with the crowd and stuff, Roman is being interviewed right outside of the ring, and he's like, "Oh, when Finn wins that title, I want a first crack at him," and it was exciting. It looked exciting.
Yep.
But yeah.
Sure, but let's get promos executed well too. That's what you know what I mean. That's the most.
That's a whole other thing.
It's definitely a whole other thing. But yeah, all in all, it's just, again, like I'm going to say it again because it's important. If you're going to have an interviewer, they got to have some credibility. You can't be pouring shit on them. You can't be pushing them to the side or taking the microphone away from them. You can't do that. Just like you don't want people running into the ring during your match. You don't want people, taking the microphone away while you're trying to ask a question. You're trying to get information. So yeah, let's treat them with some respect.
Exactly.
Yep. Anything else you got to say about interviewers? Did you want to ask me? You said you wanted to ask me about interviews.
Oh, well, I mean, because I know you interview a lot of people. I was gonna ask you how to avoid. When you prepare your interviews, how do you avoid like silly questions? But I guess the easiest question is to just don't ask silly questions. Don't ask
stupid questions. But but the thing is, okay, from a wrestling standpoint, like, okay, WWE, we all know it's heavily scripted and it's heavily, micromanaged. So, but here's the thing, here's a story. When I was doing radio, I had to do these interviews, if you can call them that. And it was just kind of some sort of promo deal that was done. And it was just, you just go in there, you ask a bunch of stock questions just to do it, just to get something out there. And I got to say, it was the worst. It wasn't me. Like, I asked questions, like real questions that I want, like real information from, like a real response, and have a real conversation with someone. You watch some of the interviews in WWE, it's just nonsense. It's just, you're just, it's just a bunch of like, it's like press release talk. Have you ever read a press release? It's a bunch of buzzwords, a bunch of nonsense. Like it's really nothing. And again, the interviewer has no credibility. So
the jargon.
Right. Like I want people to listen to, when I do my little underground when I'm interviewing artists, it's like, I want people to know that I got some credibility, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be just a nameless, I'll tell you a story. Potty Mouth, when I interviewed that band, when I did college radio, the bass player, Allie, she came out to me, she's like, you're not just some dude on assignment, you know what I mean? And that means everything. That means you got credibility. So wrestling interviewers need credibility. That's it.
Exactly. And sometimes it's as simple as just being consistent and, and true to what the interview is supposed to, being true to the purpose of the interview, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But I don't have a problem if wrestling wants to move away from that. But if you're gonna do
it well, okay, fine.
Yeah, exactly. If you're gonna do it well. If not, don't have interviewers at all. If it's just there to fill time and space, get rid of it. I'd much rather have the wrestler hold the mic by themselves and, listen, this is where an interviewer where you need to have one in wrestling. This is when you need to have one. If something crazy happens, like somebody, okay, for example, AEW didn't do this, but, it's not the worst thing in the world. When Alicia Black showed up and he kicked Cody, he kicked Arn Anderson, that would have been a good place to use an interviewer to say, yes. Why? Why did you do that? And then he can explain why.
And then
they didn't do that. Yeah, they didn't do that, but it's not the end of the world. They didn't do it. It's just a different way of thinking. It's just a different, 20 years, 30 years ago, that probably would have happened. But that's a good place to have an interviewer. With credibility, though. They have to have credibility for you to take it seriously, in my opinion. Exactly. Yeah.
And imagine being like, oh my God, he just kicked Johnny Cervani. Why? Just some sort of interaction that, helps it feel exciting, helps it be like, oh crap, like, oh my God, he just kicked everybody. Like, it would have like made the situation more chaotic.
Yeah.
But I didn't think about it like that, actually. Yeah, that would have been a nice place.
It's not like they did something wrong by not having one, but it would have been cool to have that. It's just a good example of how to use an interviewer.
It also would have been a good time to ask him what his freaking name is. Are you Tommy End or Malachi Black? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would have been a nice time to do that, but hey.
Yeah.
Purpose of an interviewer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Anything else about interviewers, Smiley? This is pretty much your show.
Oh, really? Oh, well, I just had like, because like you're the interviewer, I figured like rather than me yap and complain about like I usually do, I just ask you a question.
But this is a caucus.
That's true.
Yeah, we have to. We talk. My Little Underground is where I interview, but this is where. Well, even that show is just conversation, but this is a caucus. We have to discuss things. It takes two to tango here.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah. All right. With that, it's the Wrestling Caucus. I'm Peter A.
I'm Smiley Arriaga.
And you can listen to the Wrestling Caucus anywhere you get podcasts. And you can follow us on the socials, facebook.com/the Wrestling Caucus, Twitter @Wrestling Caucus, and of course, the Instagram @the Wrestling Caucus. All right. Later days.